Hi, I'm Larry Berman, and here's what's on my radar this week. Well, there's so much to choose from that happened this week, but a couple of key events. One focused on earnings. Intel obviously dropped a big bomb on Thursday night on the semiconductor space and technology in general. You know, what Intel, one of the world leaders in chips, tells us is that not only are they executing poorly on a company-specific basis, but the industry's challenged. This new tech battle with China that's likely to last, years and years, if not decades into the future, is going to have a material shift as supply chains move around. And right now, Intel looks to be on the losing end of that trade, where an AMD, for example, looks to be a bit of a beneficiary, where they make more specific chips for AI and things like that, where there's higher demand. So, when you look at a chart of Intel over the last number of years, you can see, major breakout back in 2017 when lots of stocks were running, and then pullbacks and consistent pullbacks into the mid to low 40s. So I think that's where it's headed short term. We've got to retest that support. That could weigh on the whole semiconductor space for a couple of weeks here through earnings period. And if that support holds, then it's probably a short-term buy for a trade. But the semiconductor space is a bit of a hornet's nest at the moment. Also on the technology side, we saw a more formal antitrust push against Google. And interestingly enough, we saw Google rally, and so maybe they really think Congress is going to be soft here. But I've looked at a number of blogs and comments, and the theme that I'm picking up here is the marketplace doesn't really appreciate, and certainly not priced into these stocks at the moment, how serious Congress will get or can be in terms of this antitrust and the monopoly that some of these companies have. And I think we're going to be surprised to the downside in a lot of them. So there's an ETF that plays the sector. It's the social media ETF, SOCL. And right now, short term, looks like if you're looking for something to short on the downside and hedge on the downside against maybe other tech positions that you like, looks like semiconductors and social media stocks might be short-term plays to the downside. So SCOL, obviously, if you like the sector, that's the way to play it on the bull side, but I would be very cautious there. At least for right now. Now, when we look at the final debate that we had, of course, the middle one was canceled. This one was so much better in terms of being professional and presidential than the first one was, and because of that, it was a little bit soft on content. There was not a lot of depth in terms of policy, but it got interesting towards the end when President Trump got Vice President Biden to talk about fracking in the energy sector and the Green New Deal. And when Biden, he got Biden to say, listen, we're going to vary in a smart way, but we're going to not support the traditional energy sector anymore, and we're not going to ban fracking on federal lands, and we're going to support the green technologies, and we want to be, net zero in terms of carbon emissions by the middle of this century. And Trump goes, looked over to him, and I said, I think you just lost Texas and maybe Pennsylvania too. Like, he didn't say that, but that's what he was implying. So we got to watch the races closely this week as we get close to the U.S. election. Two very big states. Texas probably stays Republican. Be very surprising if it went the other way. Pennsylvania, very, very important. Biden may have put his foot in it this week by commenting on his plans for fracking in the energy sector overall. When we think about the Biden themes for trade and we think about the Trump themes for trade, the market is telling us that it believes that Biden's going to win the election when we look at what's been leading. So I got a couple charts for you to look at quickly here. We'll put up the Biden themes, and in particular the alternative energy and green tech trade, very overbought in recent months, as it looks like we're going to get a blue wave in terms of the election outcome. I think it's going to be way closer than that. There's going to be a period perhaps of weeks after the election of a lot of uncertainty where we won't know who the president is, and it probably goes to the Supreme Court. When you think about clean energy versus old traditional energy, XLE is the ETF representing the traditional energy space on a large cap basis for the US markets. And you can see that gray line there, which is the energy sector, how it's underperformed significantly, and it's back at the lows seen during the peak of the COVID crisis months ago, and when oil prices actually went negative in April. So we're back there now. So you've got this value trade developing where if it's close and Trump actually wins, the traditional energy sector is going to outperform dramatically, at least for a trade, where the green energy sector is going to be sold off heavily. Bear trade of the week is ICLN. Bull trade of the week is XLE. Have a great week, everybody. Remember, subscribe to the channel, follow the alerts so you know when we have good content out there. And for goodness sake, save a life, wear your masks. Be safe, everybody.